Hello and welcome to Dice and Demons. I'm Emma, and in this video I'm going to show you a quick tutorial of something we could all use a little bit more of in our day-to-day lives, which is of course slime effects. So the reason for this video is that I went to my friend Anne's house yesterday and she had painted up a monster that is already quite slimy in and of itself, but she wanted to make it even more disgusting than it already is by adding strands of saliva from the the teeth in the upper part of the mouth connected to the lower part of the mouth. And she asked if I wanted to come and help her come up with a way of doing that. And while we were working on it, it occurred to us, why not just film it and turn it into a tutorial? So it's filmed at Anna's house, and I didn't have my usual setup, so the lighting isn't quite as good as it usually is, but I definitely think it's good enough for you to see what we did, and perhaps you can use that in some of your own projects, because I mean, after all, slime is good, and more slime is more good, right? We used a bit of clear fishing line and we dipped that in a bit of UV resin, and then we attached that to the back of one of the front teeth. I then turned on a UV flashlight and it cures the UV resin really quickly in about, I don't know, somewhere between 5 to 10 seconds, I believe, at least if it's just a really small amount like this was. And once it was firmly attached, it was a bit easier to make out exactly how long the fishing line needed to be, and then we could just clip off the rest. And using a toothpick with a bit of UV resin on it, we could then, with a pair of tweezers, really easily manipulate the fishing line into place, and then just use the flashlight once again, curing the UV resin and locking it in place. Then, to add a little bit of texture to the fishing line, making it look like it's more of something that is actually organic and has droplets of moisture and slime and saliva to it, and we added a little bit more UV resin along the strand of fishing line, and again we used the toothpick and sort of just tapped the fishing line with the toothpick with the UV resin on it. And the surface tension of the UV resin means that it'll actually hold in place like tiny droplets, and then you can just again turn on the flashlight and cure it as it is, and you have something that I think looks quite believably as big saliva strands from a monster. Of course, these strands are a little bit thick because the fishing line does have a certain width to it, whereas if you used something like a thread for sewing, for instance, you could make something that was a lot thinner. But for this exact monster, we didn't think it mattered too much. We actually thought it was quite cool that you could really easily see these thick, disgusting strands of slime coming out of its mouth. But if you wanted something a little bit more fine, a thread could do it as well. The only thing being then that usually a thread is not exactly transparent like the fishing line is, but perhaps you can then use a slightly colored or tinted UV resin or something, or perhaps you could find thinner fishing lines. I don't fish, so I don't exactly know where you could find that, but perhaps that would be possible as well. We also decided we wanted a sort of droplet of saliva hanging off one of the teeth, and so we again just took the fishing wire and we just dipped it into the UV resin, and you can see again the surface tension of the UV resin means you get sort of a nice like droplet shaped thing hanging off the fishing wire. And we just did this I don't know, 5 times or something until it had built up the amount of layers that we wanted to. And then we decided where exactly we wanted it to be hanging from and how long the sort of strand needed to be before we cut it into shape, and attached it to the tooth, again using a pair of tweezers and some extra UV resin. UV resin works really nicely, as you can see here, as some sort of glue, except that instead of like super glue that gets all misty and clouded when it dries, this dries up completely clear. And that was it. That was what we ended up with. We were quite tempted to just keep adding strands of saliva because it was so much fun. We felt like some sort of demented dentists just trying to, instead of helping a patient out, making it even more disgusting than it already was, which was also quite fun. But we decided that sometimes less is more, and perhaps we had well, perhaps we actually had added enough slime as it was. So after this, we were done with all of this. It turned out that I should never have done this, because this is going to be a monster that my party is going to encounter in our games of D&D. And so now I have just made sure that my character is going to suffer an even more unpleasant death than she probably already was. But I guess there you go. It was fun at least. So before you go, I would also like to take the opportunity to thank my Patreons. They are some amazingly kind, supportive people who have decided they want to support this channel on Patreon, and I really appreciate it. So thank you to Thomas Madsen, to Gwenna L, Andre Correa, Anthony Paul Castro, TJ Kubiak, Mando Project, Starcon85, Esbeer, and Echinocacus. If you want to join these lovely people, you can do so over on Patreon, and I'll leave a link to that in my show notes. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye!